yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of a side trip into my book, Living Kindness. Maybe do a few classes on some of the different teachings in there, since we've kind of reached that part of step 11 that goes into loving kindness. So I think tonight I'll do a traditional guided loving kindness meditation with the categories. This is not actually, it was not a practice that was actually taught by the Buddha, but was, as far as we know, or where we find it, is in the what's called the Visuddhimagga, which is a book of commentaries, a kind of compiled commentaries. And so after the Buddha died, there were stories that people had, sort of backstories for some of the teachings and some of the characters who showed up in the suttas. And those weren't always included in what was sort of retained as the canon. Like, okay, this is the important stuff. We don't need to tell them about, this person's home life or whatever. But some of those stories kind of elucidated some of the subtler or more cryptic teachings in the suttas. And so eventually, actually 1,000 years after the Buddha, someone named Buddhaghosa, who was a monk, I think he was from southern India, but this was done. He went to Sri Lanka to do this work. I think he might have sort of been invited to do it. Like, he had all these stories and he kind of organized them in these commentaries, and he organized them. And so it was kind of a way of systematizing some of the things that were not systematized in the suttas. So one of the things that became systematized then was this way of practicing loving kindness meditation that has become very kind of the standard form in Western Buddhism, in large thanks to Sharon Salzberg and her 1995 classic called Loving Kindness. So that's my prelude. I like to let people have some picture, and I know it's not, everybody doesn't care about that, but I think a good number of people are interested to kind of know, well, where'd this come from? Because it sort of shows up in books and things, and you're like, is that real? What? Who made that up? But so that's what I know, or at least understand about this. So yeah, let's start with working with this form. And so, as usual, we'll sit for about 20 minutes. So this may go a little, in terms of the different categories, I may have to go through them a little quickly, but I'll try not to make it feel rushed. Maybe I'll ring a bell to start. Settling into a comfortable meditation posture. When doing loving kindness, we especially want to be comfortable, because we don't want any sort of aversive thoughts or feelings to arise, or at least we want to make them less likely to arise. And feeling the breath, and particularly feeling the breath in the center of the chest, what we call the heart center. Seeing if you can have a sense of softening and opening here. So we take a bit of a risk with this practice of being vulnerable, of letting ourselves be open and be touched. And bringing to mind someone who's very dear to you, someone who it's easy to love. This can be a person typically, but could also be a pet, a dear pet, just some being that really evokes this feeling of warmth, tenderness. And as you think of them, and breathing from the heart, begin to use some phrases of loving kindness. So, in your mind, speaking to this dear being and saying, may you be happy. May you be peaceful. And may you be safe. And then just letting those phrases continue, letting them perhaps move with the breath so that you're staying in the body, keeping some awareness in the heart. Letting this feeling of caring and warmth radiate to this loved one. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be safe. You can use these phrases, or if there's others that you prefer, there's no correct phrase. Just finding words of kindness you can radiate. Now, whatever feelings of love or caring have arisen, just allow them to be turned inward to yourself. Just as you're feeling that for someone else, just let that feeling remain with you as you repeat the loving kindness phrases for yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. There's no need to think about these words or or even to think about yourself, but to just feel that. Feel the sense of kindness and caring, same way you feel for this beloved, to just continue to feel that for yourself. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. The breath and the words moving together, the felt experience of kindness, tenderness. Now opening the heart to a broader range of people, those you care for, your family or friends, only the ones who are dearest to you, and letting maybe an image or just a felt sense of people arise. And it's as though your heart is opening wider to contain these other dear ones. And you can continue the loving kindness phrases for each person. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be safe. Now, there doesn't have to be a lot of thinking, just a kind of flow, feelings and images, words, breath. And now we come to the neutral person. Not a category we often think of. So to see if you can come up with someone that you know, that you don't have a strong feeling about. Just could be someone who works in a shop or a cafe that you see, or a neighbor down the street or in your building that you've passed, maybe said hello to, but no real emotional connection, so that you can just send love to them as another human being who deserves love. And don't struggle too hard trying to find the perfect neutral person. Just see if someone comes to mind that you can work with. And then again, using the phrases of loving kindness. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be safe. Staying with the repeating phrases, with the breath, with the image, and with the feeling. So it's quite a full experience, really absorbing. And now moving to the difficult person. Here, this as well can be a challenge emotionally. So we want to be very careful. First of all, if it feels overwhelming, to just step out of that. Maybe just go back to the breath. And you don't have to pick the most difficult person. It can just be someone who kind of irritates you, maybe, or that you've had a conflict with. And so seeing what happens to the heart when you think of a difficult person. Can you stay open? Can you stay with that kindness? Understanding that even though they may have hurt you or irritated you, that they also just want happiness. Perhaps they're going about it wrong, but that's what they want. as it seems everyone does. So just for these few moments to let down any resistance and offer loving kindness to a difficult person. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be safe. And now we begin to radiate loving kindness over the entire world. A sense of the heart opening further, kind of limitless love passes, flows out of you, out into the world. If it's helpful, you can visualize your neighborhood and then your city and keep expanding as though your mind were encompassing ever greater areas, ever greater space. Thinking of the views of the earth from space, and that your heart is radiating loving kindness around the entire planet, holding the planet with love. It's actually true that love is limitless, boundless. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings everywhere be peaceful. May all beings everywhere be safe. And now from that very expansive state, that expansive perspective, just bring attention back into your body, feeling yourself sitting here, the solidity of the body, the movement of breath. Just sitting, nothing special. Fun. Yeah, that's funny. I don't usually like going through all the complexity of that guided meditation, but I enjoyed that. And lately I've been sort of getting a little bit into teaching that. Was talking about teaching with Greg Pergament, the Qigong teacher who teaches with me, and how we've been working with Qigong as a loving kindness practice and kind of combining the two. So I really like to try to really capture the felt experience of this practice, not just the words, but it's tricky because, if you're not in the mood, if you're just not in the right mind state for it, and then you're trying, that becomes like this resistance, and then that can turn into a story. What's wrong with me? I can't feel this. He's telling me to feel something. I'm not feeling it. Um, and so, if you get to that place to just really let it go, it's not that important. I mean, it's like, it's a feeling. That's a feeling that comes and goes. Feelings are impermanent. If it arises, great, utilize it. If not, then just be with your breath, just sit. So I guess before I get into this, because that is such a sort of prescriptive practice, I feel like I'd like to just see if anybody had a question either about the practice or anything that kind of came up as you were doing the practice. It's not necessary. I just wanted to check because sometimes I don't like to leave people hanging if they do have something in their mind. Okay, so I'm gonna go to this little book here. So how long is it? 1,700. Oh no, that's way more than 1,700 pages. Anyway, this is the Samyutta Nikaya. In English, that's the Connected Discourses of the Buddha. One of the sutta collections. This is one of the big ones. And I drew from this very short sutta for Living Kindness for my chapter on love for yourself, which is often one of the most difficult parts of the practice for people. It's like, oh, love yourself. Huh? What? Say what? How do I do that? So I'll talk a little bit about this because this just is from the further out, like the Samyutta Nikaya, it says connected discourses. A lot of the discourses are very short, and they're gathered into these things that are like related to each other in one way or another. And so this is an area, this is a group of suttas that are called the Kosala Samyutta. And Kosala was a small kingdom that in northern India, northeastern India, during the time of the Buddha. And the king and queen of Kosala show up quite a bit in the suttas. The Queen Malika, as the story goes, she was a flower girl, very sort of low caste, but a devotee of the Buddha. And supposedly King Pasenadi was passing through the city of Kosala and saw her and just became infatuated with her and made her a queen. I think he had a few queens, as was popular with the fellas in those days, especially the king fellas. But we don't really hear much about the other ones because Malika is kind of like the one that that interacts with the Buddha quite a bit. So here's this little sutta. Oh, it's actually in the town of Savatthi. Sorry, Kosala. I guess the capital of Kosala is Savatthi. I'm not all that great about all that. So this sutta is just called Malika. It says, at Savatthi. Now, on that occasion, King Pasenadi of Kosla had gone together with Queen Malika to the upper terrace of the palace. Then King Pasenadi of Kosla said to Queen Malika, "Is there, Malika, anyone more dear to you than yourself?" "There is no one, great king, more dear to me than myself." "But is there anyone, great king, more dear to you than yourself?" "For me too, Malika, there is no one more dear than myself." Then King Pasenadi of Kosla descended from the palace and approached the Blessed One. That's the Buddha. Having approached, he paid homage to the Blessed One, sat down to one side, and related to the Blessed One his conversation with Queen Malika. Then the Blessed One, having understood the meaning of this, on that occasion recited this verse: "Having traversed all quarters with the mind, one finds none anywhere dearer than oneself. Likewise, each person holds himself most dear. Hence, one who loves him or herself should not harm others." So it's a sutta that sometimes people kind of misconstrue it to say that, like, you are, well, I'm not sure how it just sometimes people kind of misconstrue it to make it sound like you're like the most special person in the world. And one finds none anywhere dearer than oneself. So it's a striking uh, comment from the Buddha. So I'll go back to the question, because when I first read this sutta, I thought, well, King Pasenadi is testing Queen Malika, because what he wants her to say is, "Oh, I love you most of all," right? I mean, he's the king, right? So if he asks you who's your favorite person, you're supposed to say him. But Malika is, nothing if not honest. She's really a very pure being. So she says the truth, and one can only imagine then that King Pasenadi kind of goes, "Oh, right, okay, yeah. Well, now that you mention it, I guess I feel the same way." So let me read a little bit from Living Kindness, because I described this sutta in here, but I'll uh, uh, so it says, uh, King Pasenadi goes and tells the Buddha about this conversation, whereupon the Buddha says, "If you look around, you find that everyone feels this way. Everyone holds themselves dear." His conclusion then is that knowing how everyone feels, you should never hurt anyone. They are all precious to themselves. This is a somewhat convoluted way of getting to the point, but it does make sense. It's asking people to have empathy. I know that I wouldn't want to be harmed, so I'm sure no one else wants to be harmed. Essentially, it's preaching the golden rule. The Buddha then adds that if you love yourself, you won't harm anyone else. This seems like the moment when the Buddha might have addressed the opposite notion, that one who does not love oneself will harm another. For those of us who have struggled with self-hatred, depression, anxiety, or despair, this seems like the more vital issue. The current phrase, hurt people, captures this idea succinctly, but he never takes up that side of the issue. So if the Buddha assumes we love ourselves, it's worth asking more specifically what that means. In the last chapter, I asked, what is loving kindness? Now I want to be even more direct. What is love? What does dear to myself mean? If we recognize that the comparing mind will never be satisfied, will never say that we are good enough or that we deserve love, then it seems that we can never find ourselves more dear than we do other people. But I think love, at least in this context, means something simpler and more basic. This is what I think love is. When we are hungry, we feed ourselves. When thirsty, we drink. When sick, we seek care and medicine. When tired, we rest. When we are anxious, we try to calm ourselves. When we are sad, we try to make ourselves happy. When we feel spiritually barren or lacking, we seek teachings and practices to find peace and wisdom. In all these ways, we care for ourselves. And that's what I think love is, caring. And this caring for ourselves is the most natural thing. We don't have to like ourselves or believe that we are worthy to get a glass of water or to go to bed. I might think I'm a second-rate guitarist and a lousy writer, but I will still make myself lunch. Now, just making lunch for yourself might not seem like a great act of love, but think about all the simple ways we don't take care of ourselves, including not eating well, not getting enough rest, working too much, and not exercising. Then there are the obvious things like abusing ourselves with alcohol and drugs. Parentheses, funny we call it abusing alcohol and drugs, as if the substance were being harmed. These behaviors show a lack of care for our own well-being. So taking care of ourselves is clearly a meaningful act, an act of love. When we determine to take better care of ourselves in these simple ways, it sets us on a path of focusing on kindness, which naturally begins to reveal the inner world of self-hate. While taking care of ourselves externally is one form of metta, when I see thoughts of self-hatred, of shaming, or comparing, metta practice gives me a tool for responding internally with kindness. And this is what this first stage of practice points us to. You are a human being, and as such are subject to suffering, dukkha in Pali. You should be kind to a person who is suffering. When the Buddha compares metta to a mother's protection, he's talking about the same thing. A mother cares for her children, not because they've earned it. Children can be a huge pain, but because they need it. And with this first stage of metta practice, we learn to care for and protect ourselves. You may have seen Buddhists wearing red or white strings around their wrists. These are traditionally given out at the end of a retreat and are called protection strings or cords. When one student asked his teacher what they actually protect us from, he said, ourselves. The cords act as reminders to be kind to ourselves, to arouse metta, to heal our suffering, and protect us from our own minds. So I'm still not sure if I've made the argument that I wanted to make when I wrote that chapter and when I talk about this. Like, it makes sense to me, but sometimes I'm like, is that really like making sense to people? So just to go back to this sutta, there is no one more dear to me than myself. This, I think it's not something that we would typically say in our culture, because that would sound like you were bragging. But I think that the way I hear it, the way I understand it, is not as a compare. I mean, obviously it is comparing, but it's not saying I am more dear to myself than anyone else. I'm saying I'm not putting anyone above me, but I don't think it's necessarily saying that I'm putting anyone below me either. I mean, again, when the Buddha says, having traversed all quarters, which means with his mind, he's able to go out in the world, one finds none anywhere dearer than oneself. Likewise, each person holds himself most dear. It's the gender pronoun, him or herself most dear, themselves most dear. I don't think the Buddha is talking about a feeling, or like I say, like liking yourself. It's that here I am in this body, and with this mind. And this is the only person I can take care of. I can try to take care of other people, but I can't protect anyone ultimately. You know, even the most vulnerable children, I can't keep them from getting sick or whatever, whatever, getting injured. And so this idea of just caring for yourself. Mhm. So let me just say, like, where I'm trying to get to with this teaching, and I don't know if I'm getting there, but where I'm really trying to get to is to relieve people of the idea that there's something wrong with judging yourself or being mad at yourself or having comparing yourself to others. That I think is perfectly normal. And I don't think that means that you don't love yourself. I think when you don't take care of yourself, that's when you're really not loving yourself. When you get pissed off at yourself, like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or I'm so embarrassed, or, whatever, you know, that's just, to me, that's just like, sure. But that's not where the real harm comes. The real harm comes when we don't take care of ourselves. This is why I say that love is caring. And it's just an idea. I don't know if it's right, but it's kind of what I arrived to as I reflected on on this sutta and on the idea of loving kindness, because I just see people struggle so much in the Buddhist world with doing loving kindness for themselves. And I think that partly because the type of people who come to Buddhist practice tend to be humble, anyway. I think it's a somewhat self-selecting group that's not like an arrogant, narcissistic crowd, like just really. But it's not about, again, it's like, I'm not trying to convince people that everybody's great. It's more like, to me, yeah, we're all assholes, but that doesn't mean we don't take care of ourselves, that we aren't kind to ourselves. We all do stupid stuff. So I don't, that's what I got. I hope it's helpful. I don't know. So we've got some time left. Maybe someone would like to comment. Well, Julia, you've been in that same corner of my screen this whole time, and so it's appropriate that you would raise your hand.
Yeah, I'll say something. I I like the topic. I got a lot out of tonight's talk. Um, I think this last time around of getting sober and putting myself in an environment, caring enough about myself to get sober and be in an environment that supports my being sober, which is always been my preference because I like being sober. Um, I seem to do better in life, and I'm not as self-centered. And you talked about, you should not harm others as part of this loving yourself. And it's so true because I have a resentment against my ex-husband, and he's mentally ill. So it doesn't make sense to be resentful. It makes more sense to have compassion, but have boundaries with that situation. Um, and it just felt good to laugh tonight at the meeting, to show up. And that's what I've been doing this week, is laughing more. I've been watching this comedian on YouTube, and it just makes me laugh about the way he looks at life, and he's kind of quirky. And it was a difficult week. And I think it was just difficult because, I just need to, like you say, let go and let other people have their journey, especially my own children. And I'm really proud of them, and I want what's best. And I'm really learning a lot about letting go. and letting them be, and just really appreciating them for who they are. And remember my own journey. It's taken me a while,
Mm.
and it still is a process,
Yeah.
for me. So I like coming to this meeting because it just helps me to stop. And I feel like I really had no choice when I was 18, but to sober up. And now I'm 59. And
Mm.
but I saw my grandfather suffer in his disease. And I remember thinking, I'm not really impressed with that path,
Mm.
And I liked him as a person, but I thought, I don't want to live that way. So I was pretty observant as a kid. And anyways, so thank you. It was really
Yeah.
helpful tonight.
Good. Thank you. You reminded me that I have a resentment against my current wife. I don't have an ex-wife, but anyway, I'm working on that. Cheryl.
Hi, Kevin. So glad to be here tonight. And I just really wanted to thank you for, it was really nice to read this with you. The first time I read that paragraph, this is what I think love is. I have all of that actually highlighted, and it made me really emotional. I got really choked up, and as I did again tonight when you read it. And I just didn't know it could be that simple. Of course, I make myself lunch, and of course I go to bed, but when I get up in the four corners of my head, I make it complicated, and I don't give myself enough to know. I do take care, and I love the way you worded it. And thank you. Thanks for reading.
Thank you. I'm glad you appreciated it. Yeah, I mean, it's like in recovery when we say just suit up and show up. It's like, yeah, it's like if you get through a day without drinking, it's a success. That's the kind of, I like those kind of viewpoints of keeping it simple and not like having to attain something to make it like, life is hard enough as it is without having to set up sort of these goals that define our value, define our worth. That just seems wrong, and it's a trap because you never get there, right? I mean, that's why I have compassion for billionaires. Much as I think they should still pay higher taxes and not be billionaires, I just think the way you get there is because you're never satisfied. The way you become a billionaire is you're not satisfied with having $900 million. You've got to have more. And how painful that has to be. Like, I'm not okay unless I have a billion, I mean, and it is a terrible disease of our society and our culture. But I think it's human. But this culture, particularly because we're so wealthy, we're able to go to that extreme in a way that in other societies, there just wasn't that much wealth to keep going. Anyway, thank you. Steve, hi.
Hi, Kevin. That was an excellent reading, and I really struggle with that whole concept of taking care of myself. I know on Tuesday's meeting, I was talking to you about, and the group, about how I had this blissful experience and I was feeling wonderful. And you made the comment that, isn't it wonderful because of all the work that we do and the practice that we have these moments of bliss and feeling serenity and everything. And then you said, but it doesn't last. And you were right. I'm having one of those days where I'm not taking good care of myself because I'm feeling a tremendous amount of resentments. And I'm struggling with these resentments towards my stepdaughter and her ex-husband because they're not helping us. I'm raising their kid. He's 15 years old, and I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars on this kid over the years, and they're not helping financially, and they're just deadbeat parents. And so I have all these resentments, but I know I shouldn't be having these resentments because it's actually a gift that I'm raising this child. And so I just spiral out and go down this path of not taking care of myself. So during the meditation, I was like, okay, just breathe, calm down, everything's cool, you know, and I was feeling exactly what you were describing. You know, I'm not good enough. I should be able to calm down. And so I go down that path, and that is just really exactly not taking care of myself. So I think what you were reading in your talk was spot on, and that's why I'm here tonight, because I needed to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. I mean, it is, yeah, it's, you know, we have, I mean, a recovery program, you know, starts with that external, like I'm going to stop doing that destructive behavior, but then it turns to the inner work. And so, and that's very much exactly what the Buddhist path does, right? The beginning of the Buddhist path is sila, the ethical and really behavioral elements of the path. And if we're not taking care of ourselves and being, you know, skillful and you know, in our behavior and ethical, if we're not doing that as a groundwork, then it poisons the mind. And but just taking care on the physical level, we still then we then have to make sure, you know, that we have to do the inner work as well, because even if we're acting as we know, and showing up and suiting up and showing up, if our mind is caught up in negativity and destructive in challenging emotional states and all that, then, you know, we're not going to be happy, we're not going to be comfortable. And so, you know, once we, you know, kind of establish a baseline of external, we have to really work on the inner. You know, it's so interesting. I mean, you know, I have a little trick I'll share with you a little bit about one of my ways of getting through certain challenging moments. That I knew I was going to have this meeting today, this business meeting that I'd been thinking about for weeks and kind of putting it off. And it was literally causing me last night to lose sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And what I reminded myself was that after it was over, it would be over. And I just like, and that, I mean, also, you know, the other really obvious thing is that I'm creating a whole story around it, and that it's probably not going to be the way I expect it to be. And partly that was because I knew that I had to, you know, I had one version of this meeting where I acted insane, you know, and so it was good for me to like envision that and go, oh, that's not a good plan. Like, try not to be insane, you know. And I was like, okay, I kind of made it as like, what are the things that I want to say? And I made a list, and it was like, I was very, and it wound up being this really successful, more successful, remarkably successful meeting that I came out of just feeling really good. And just, again, reminding myself, like, all this mental projection is just mental projection. It has nothing to do with reality, you know. I mean, I can, you know, look at the green up there 100 yards away and say, all I have to do is hit the ball and from here, and I can make it go in the hole. I think I'm going to make it go in the hole. I'm going to. And then it doesn't go in the hole, you know, because it was just a thought, you know. It's one thing to visualize, but I mean, you know, that ain't reality. And if what happens to my head is like, oh, damn it, I didn't go in the hole, I'm such a failure, I'm so terrible, you know, forget it, I'm throwing these clubs into the woods, you know, that doesn't get me anything, because it turns out that the fun of life is like going up and figuring out what to do when your ball wound up in the wrong place. And like, oh, can I salvage this, and chip it on and like, hey, I got it. I only got, it's like, yeah, that was fun. Like, I may have lost the thread there a little bit, but you get the idea. It's like, there's our thoughts and then there's reality. And if we allow our thoughts to sort of define how things should be or what they're going to be, then we wind up in these creating these mental states that are suffering, that are dukkha, that are completely unnecessary. I mean, I knew it lying in bed last night. I was like, I know this is unnecessary. I know it's not going to be what I think it's going to be. But most of all, I was like, but as I say, like the one thing I can get through is like, just to remember, it's going to be over. Like, this flight, the plane's going to land. I'm going to get home. When you're in those moments, like, I don't want to be in this situation. It's like, I know it's going to end. Just remembering impermanence. Anyway, life is difficult.
Well, you're having a Mark Twain moment. Most of the stuff we think is going to happen, it doesn't happen. Well, really quickly, the other thing that you said in your talk, which is part of your uniqueness that I appreciate so much, is humility. If I become a little bit more humble and realize that this isn't a permanent situation, that's so imperative for me to just to remain in that space, to have humility. I'm able to do these things and don't stop fretting about it, so that's something you talked about, and that's what makes you unique, in my opinion.
Thank you. I'm not gonna, try to, well, I'm just reading this great chat from Cal. Found myself radiating kindness to Nikki, Van, and Eric. I wish I'd have thought of that. Anyway, did we talk about the retreat? Did I talk about the retreat, Angela? I don't think I did. We got to fill up this retreat. Now it's about, I need all you codependents out there to come on the retreat, because if you don't, I'm going to be really unhappy, and you don't want me to be unhappy. So, no, it's really, we've been talking about it. The team, and Angela and Debbie are part of the team, the teaching team and the support team. And I think it's really going to be neat to be able to do this. I've been talking about how I just taught a retreat live with people, and it was really delightful. It was a lot better than Zoom. And Zoom is, I'm grateful for Zoom, but it was a lot better than Zoom. And if you can afford it, if you can take the time, if you can make it to Northern California, we've got some pretty affordable rates for a 5-day retreat. And I think probably the link is somewhere in there it is. If you scroll up your chat, it says 18th Annual Buddhism Recovery Intensive Retreat. There's a flyer. It's just a PDF, but basically what it tells you to do is email Angela, who's got an email address, Insight Retreat. What is it? Insight Meditation Retreat @gmail.com. And she will give you all the info and the registration. So I hope people will come, because it's really, really going to be nice and wonderful. Instead of it just being Kevin, there's some great other voices that will be guiding things. So tomorrow there's that, the concentration thing. And on Sunday morning, I'm speaking at some AA meeting. If anybody wants to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's like the Grand Island. I don't know what it is. If anybody wants to show up, just, email me and I'll, it's because they didn't even send me a link. They sent me like somebody texted me the number for the meeting. But I will be back on Tuesday, and I'm going to try to, I think I'll probably continue to do some of this metta before I go back to one breath at a time. So thank you all for showing up on a Friday night or a Saturday morning if you happen to be in Thailand or Australia. some of you. And Gail, thank you very much for the Donna. I just meant to say that. Very sweet. I love your cards. I hope your wife is doing well. Okay, folks. Good night.